This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country, and we join their calls for justice.
Serious danger to Australia.
I'm so excited for this. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Tom. You're going to regret letting me finally do
Jesus.
Echo Effect, the Lawns episode.
This is a reward for people who pay money to support our wonderful show, Serious Danger, a podcast about green politics in Australia. I'm Tom Ella. That is Emerald Moon. This is not an official Greens Party podcast. I don't know what the official Greens Party position on lawns is. I'm sure we'll discover it in this ensuing conversation. It is made possible with the help of the Green Institute and produced by Michael, the Griffin. Thank you so much for supporting the show and chipping in. Whether it's $3 a month or more than that, we love you. And we really help us keep the lights on and keep the show going. And so we bring you bonus content like this.
Yeah, that's right. Without you, we would not be making an hour-long, no, I don't know how long this is going to go for, but a full episode about lawns and grass and maybe golf. We'll see. See how we go.
Lawns, you're cancelled.
You're cancelled.
We've been talking about doing this for a long time. Like, this has been on the roster of like, oh, we're going to do bonus stuff. Hey, we should do the lawn chat. And I don't know what the fuck the lawn chat was.
Yeah.
And then I suggested do the lawn chat. And you go, nah, let's do something else. And now we're back on to the lawns.
Yeah. Because I think I knew, like, I'm excited by this, but I knew if I was required to prep for the lawn episode, I would get far too deep. I would fall right down the rabbit hole dug into the little lawn that is my brain. And it's exactly what happened.
Go on, give me the big picture pitch. Let's
big picture pitch is that there is a leftist anti-lawns movement that's actually been around for some time that has had a resurgence, I would say, in the last 8 years. It seems like it had a bit of a boost mid-2010s in the US. Mm-hmm. And it's like partly meme because there's something just quite funny about hating lawns. But it's also quite serious. There's like environmental reasons, and then there's also these kind of anti-colonial, anti-imperialist takes. There's even a gender, there's even like an anti-sexist take about why lawns are bad, and we're going to get into all of it.
Well, men have to mow them, don't they? Is it about that?
It is kind of about that, yeah.
Fucking
actually.
hell.
We'll get there.
Go on.
Did I tell you about when this came up kind of recently, when I started thinking about that we should do an episode, or like what prompted this, the thing with my sister? No. So, okay, my sister, Aviva, she doesn't listen to the show. She's a Zoomer. She's 16. A couple of years ago, so I guess, I don't know if she's in like year 8 or 9, and she often will message me for advice on assignments at school. And she was asking me about this geography assessment that they had that was like, make a policy proposal, like propose an idea that would help save the food bowl and, a sustainability idea. And she, unprompted, was like, so I'm thinking ban lawns.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Huge.
And I was like, Aviva, my queen, my Zoomer queen. She was
my
just
little
like,
Greta.
Exactly, my little Greta. And then I was reading back on the messages. Yes, this is a year 8 or 9 assessment. And I'm like, if you're really interested, you could look into this idea of the Overton window, bring that concept in, widening the scope of discourse with really radical communist ideas like this. And she's like, sure, thanks. I don't know if she mentioned the Overton window in her final assessment.
Did she get a good mark?
I think she did. I actually can't remember what her exact mark is, but she generally does pretty well on things like this. She's a good writer and she's very smart. She has great politics, clearly.
Well, it's the kind of Marxist indoctrination I'd expect in the Australian education system.
Exactly. So, yes, there is an anti-lawns movement that somehow you've managed to miss, Tom. And I don't know how, because if you just dip under the top layers of the internet, you will come across some beautiful articles. To run through a few of the headlines, when I went looking for some articles about this, in 2015 in The Atlantic, The Life and Death of the American Lawn, great article. In Grist in 2016, Lawns are for suckers, plant a garden for the climate. I think there's another one in Grist that's just like fuck law, like something like lawns suck, make something better. In 2021, there's this Guardian article, Lawns and USA Politics, It's a Turf War, where this guy had decided to experiment by posting on Twitter about lawns being bad and was like, people got mad. There's this idea, I think in the US, it's like a real culture wars thing.
People got mad that he was insulting their lawns or the concept of lawns?
There were the people who were like impassioned about the idea of lawns being bad. And then there were the conservatives being like, fucking lefties want to take what? They hate lawns now? Like they fucking hate everything. They don't want anyone to have any fun.
Surely the lawns make it easier to find the bugs that they want us to eat. Come on.
Well, that's exactly why. No, because lawns don't allow for the kind of biodiversity that just not mowing your lawn. There's a subreddit. So the subreddit on entomology, is that what it is? No, what's the one about bugs?
Oh,
the study of bugs?
No, the etymology is words. Entomology
is bugs. On the entomology subreddit, there are anti-lawn memes because they're like anti-insect. So actually makes a lot of sense that the leftists are pushing the anti-lawn agenda.
Want to have more biodiversity to create more bugs that we then force everyone to eat. Okay.
Yeah, there's a quote from that Guardian article. It begins, sitting on a soft green carpet of a lawn in the summer, it's hard to picture a less politically contentious image. But in today's tumultuous world of increasingly tribal sentiment, even grass is a highly charged symbol about which we are asked to pick a side. And that, dear listener, is what we are asking you to do. Pick a side. There was a Washington Post article in 2022. There's a water crisis. Why do we still have lawns? And then there's a response article to that in the Washington Free Beacon, which is entitled, "The Libs Are Coming After Your Lawns."
Incredible.
There's posts in the Communism 101 subreddit, opinions on being anti-lawn, that's discussing this is kind of, the overall view of lawns. A lot of the time it boils down to like, is this the best use of space? And they specifically were saying, I drive past all these lawns and I think, would that be better used to build public housing, for example? To which a lot of people say, well, no, you don't want to buy into that kind of centrist liberal idea that the problem with the housing market is that, or the housing system is that there isn't enough supply and we need to build on green space to address the issue when there's all these vacant lots that could be addressed by, a vacancy levy or, actually using that fucking housing that's sitting there, and also much better to plant trees. There's a full, and then I was looking more on Reddit, and there's actually a full subreddit, no lawns.
No lawns.
It's, reddit.com/r/no lawns. I'm not a Reddit user, but I know that's a subreddit. I think
that's talking about the utopia of a world in which there are no lawns.
Well, it's just for people who are anti-lawn.
Okay.
Yeah, the movement.
Now, before we move any further, could we just clarify, when we're talking about lawns, we're talking about both in people's private houses, nature strips, and also like, big public spaces with lawns as well? Like what encapsulates the lawn world that really gets your eye going?
It seems like the main locus of like anti-lawn discourse is around big, primarily suburban lawns that are like quite large out the front of a residential house.
Okay.
But the discourse also kind of extends into covering large green spaces just with really uniform, shortcut lawn that is a monoculture, as opposed to something else like trees or native plants, things like that. But yeah, a lot of the time, when you really get it down into it, it comes from the idea of those like cookie cutter, very American suburban blocks of like white picket fence, beautiful lawn, big lawn, and then, your house behind it.
Sorry. Big lawn, of course, is the corporate lobby that is trying to back in the continued existence of lawn.
Who is selling the mowers and the leaf blowers and the rakes and the pesticides and the fertilizer and all the hoses, big hose. If folks really want to get as deep into this as I did, there is like a good if you finish this episode and you're like, I need to know the history of the anti-lawn movement, there's a good New Yorker article from 2008 called Turf War, which I'll link to in the show notes. And it goes back to like the 70s. So apparently in 1979, there was this, so like an activist, Laurie Otto, founded the anti-lawn organization Wild Ones after someone came in unprompted and like mowed their lawn, and they were so pissed off and they were like, fuck lawns. And specifically, they were talking about how shit big lawns are. There's this quote from Loriotto, if they're so large that you cannot just use a little hand push lawnmower, then I think truly they are evil. Really evil. Lawns are evil. So, do we want to get into why lawns are evil, Tom?
Yeah, lay it out. Give us the case.
All
The
right.
jury is assembled. Give us the prosecution against lawns.
All right. So maybe the most recent thing, you sent me this article actually. You, Tom, were like, oh, fascinating article about lawns.
I haven't read it. I want to make
haven't
it really
read it?
clear. I read the headline. I thought, oh, everyone will be into this, that lawn freak.
Lawn freak. There's an article published in The Guardian last week about this New Zealand study. It was from the Auckland University of Technology. And this study found that we can remove more than a gigaton of carbon from the atmosphere over 20 years if we planted just a third of the world's city lawns with trees. So this is kind of sits under the ineffective use of space argument, but it also sits under the growing, with a growing kind of climate movement, the argument that lawns are especially a waste of space when we need to be tackling the climate crisis, and they're not very good carbon sinks. Like grass it doesn't cool cities effectively. It's not as good a carbon sink, anywhere near as good a carbon sink as planting trees would be. Right. And yet lawns there's this stat, occupy about 50 to 70% of the green open spaces in the world's cities and almost 2% of the total area of the US.
And so when we talk about city lawns, again, are we talking about like the really massive bits? I'm thinking throughout Sydney, big open spaces where, it's not like necessarily a footy oval or anything, but it's also just like a big open space in which there are no trees, like a dog park with lots of rooms for dogs to run around. It's all just grass as far as the eye can see. Is that the real villain here?
I don't know about that, because when you say lawn, I actually think of something in front of a house. I don't think of just like grass. But it's a good question. There's all this. When I was doing this, there's all this kind of consternation or like debate over this particular stat, which we'll get into when we talk about wasting water. There's this stat that says lawns are the US's largest irrigated crop, or some people even say they're the largest crop, and then they're like, no, they're the largest irrigated crop, and then they're like, no, they're the largest non-food irrigated crop, which comes from this 2005 satellite imaging study that looked at, it compared the total coverage of all turf grass. So that would include like golf courses, parks, just all kind of grass as well as lawns with other crops. And it was saying that if that was all irrigated, it would be the most significant non-food crop maybe. But ultimately, no. If you see that stat around lawns being the biggest crop in the States, it's probably not true. But it is significant. It's like 40 million acres, which apparently is about 16.2 million hectares. Keep in mind, this is an old stat. This is from 2005. I don't know how recent another stat, the 2% of the total area in the US is. But like the point is that like it's massive. And what does it do?
It is, right. It just sort of looks nice, I guess. And we prefer open lawns because of they're aesthetically pleasing. Is that the general vibe? And I guess you can walk around them a bit easier. But do people even do that on their front lawns? Tom. Oh my God.
No. Yeah, well, I want to talk about this as well, because I'm like, obviously we want some grass, just like flat grassy areas that we can kick a footy, or I love to go lie on the grass and read a book, for example. The park closest to me is like one of the biggest parks in Brisbane, and it has rose gardens and it has like a few trees, but it is mostly just like big open green, and I like to lie on the grass and read a book. But is that the best use space? Should there be more?
The one near your house, that's fine. We're keeping that. But all
it has
other
rose
lawns
gardens as well.
Must be taken to the gulag.
It probably could have a few more trees. To be honest.
Okay.
And a few more native plants. I don't know. Probably be more effective in terms of tackling the climate crisis. So don't fucking judge me for liking to go sit in the park. I actually go, and it's true, I actually go sit in like the rose garden bit. So maybe they could plant all the rest of it with trees. Wouldn't bother me. I'm not the one throwing a frisbee around, but.
Oh yeah, fuck the frisbee. Big frisbee is going to be furious about this too.
Big frisbee, yeah. So and then there's the thing that it's like, oh well, it would be much better if this was trees, or if it was native plants, or if it was a garden, things like that. But there's also the environmental impact of maintaining a lawn. So a lot of people talk about, the pollution that comes from mowers and leaf blowers and things like that. I don't know how significant that pollution is really in the scheme of things. Like mowers, and aren't there increasingly electric mowers? So I feel like this is maybe a little out of date, but that's one thing that people talk about.
I will say this was a little leftist light bulb moment for me. I interviewed Ros Ward, the famous revolutionary socialist in Melbourne, for my other podcast, and she just talking about the way that our society is set up, but she just pointed out the example of lawnmowers and how in a rational society, a single street would have one communal lawnmower, but instead, like, everyone's got their own lawnmowers. You got to buy your own one for your each individual property to maintain. Yeah. Whereas, how often do you mow your lawn? You could very easily coordinate that in a collectivist way with your street for everyone to share their lawnmowers and take care of it. I guess in the communist paradise we wouldn't have lawns, but even in the society we have, that was just a nice little illustration of how individualized, atomized we are under capitalism. And yes, we don't share shit because that's not in big lawnmowers' interests.
No, but exactly. And I think this is one of the themes that has run through the anti-lawn movement. The idea of that perfectly manicured lawn in the front of your house is predicated on very much on notions of private property and of being kind of separated from your neighbors in a way that it's like it all looks the same and you're not kind of impeding on others' space. And yeah, that it doesn't, I don't know. Yeah. That idea of kind of cookie cutter kind of conformity, which is a very cliched and a bit old fashioned, I think, now in leftist spaces to talk about conformity as a bad thing. But certainly that was one of the reasons I think that the anti-lawn movement grew. Tending to your own lawn, your own little patch. It's because you have to make it look so perfect and it's your land that you own and you are triumphing over the natural state of the land as well, which is a very colonial thing.
But it's like women who, not shaving their armpits too, man. Just let it all go. And
exactly.
Who gives a fuck and let my lawn grow as much as I like it, long and tangled with weeds and bugs in there. It's beautiful.
Well, one of the quotes that I found was from this Canadian history professor, John Douglas Belshaw, who said, "What is a lawn but a statement of control over nature?" Well,
I agree with that, but that is funny. It's definitely funny. Yes.
But that was genuinely quite a few of the articles that I read talk about lawns as these imperialist colonial relics. So I think even in the lead author of the study in the article that you shared, the Guardian article, so this is the New Zealand study, is talking about how lawns were mostly established in countries like the US and Australia and New Zealand out of nostalgia for the English countryside. And they just remain as a default, but they were something that were instituted as part of that colonial venture. And particularly that mentality of modifying the landscape to suit an incoming culture or and just totally regardless of what might have been there before or what's worked for centuries, it is in that way, I think, it is kind of a symbol of colonialism and very different to how First Nations people might have interacted with the land, for example.
Right. Yeah, totally. So there's the mowers, the toxic fertilizers, and it wastes a shitload of water. We talked about that as well. And we touched on it briefly, but so it's deliberately designed to fuck over biodiversity, right? And have no bugs in there at all.
Well, of course. Well, it's bugs, but everything, right? I think the idea of a perfectly manicured lawn is you don't want things in there eating shit. You don't want creepy crawlies. You don't want little animals digging around. You want it to be your beautiful human domain that is just the lawn where I go and sit with my beautiful wife and my little children and we play bulls or something.
The nuclear family is premised on the lawn, the maintained lawn.
Yeah.
Mother, father,
as
2.5 kids and
of
a fucking
reproduction
lawn.
To feed the capitalist machine. Really make you think.
Make you think.
The water thing is actually, it looks like that was what kind of prompted a resurgence in this anti-lawn movement around 2015. Apparently there was a very big drought, significant drought in California around 2015. And there was this lawn shaming kind of there was drought shaming as a thing. And a big part of that would often be, people standing out there watering their fucking lawn when some towns are running out of water, you know? Right.
And that is like, I remember water restrictions, like, during the Millennium Drought as well. Like,
Yeah.
I have family in Horsham in the Wimmera, right, which is like, was dry as fuck. And yes, they're very strict water restrictions. And the idea that you would go out there and maintain your lawn by giving a certain amount of water that you're allowed to do. Whereas, probably it makes a lot more sense to just let the lawn die in order to preserve water for much more important purposes.
Yeah. Did you have a lawn growing up, or have you ever had a lawn?
Yeah. The house that I grew up in for most of my life in Warrnambool is a pretty decent sized block, and it's got one of those like semicircular driveways, and so everything within the semicircle at the front of our house is very large.
Yeah.
Lawn. We've got massive trees. We do have lots of trees on there, but also my dad would mow the lawn, which would take him a couple of hours. Yeah,
it used to take my mum so long to mow the lawn. Even now, actually, like her place, because she's planted grass, but she's also planted a lot of other. It's kind of like strips of grass in between other shit, which I feel is reasonable. Yeah, but there are all these, in those subreddits and these kind of forums where people talk about eschewing the social pressures to mow your lawn, and they're like, they do no mow, nay or whatever, and don't mow their lawn. And they post, before and after pictures. They post like my lawn before I started rewilding it, and then they'll post afterwards. And there's beautiful. I saw one where there were these beautiful little deer lying down in the lawn because they start coming back because it's actually encouraging natural biodiversity instead of just grass, which is, as I understand it, a pretty hostile environment for, nothing can really burrow in there, and no snakes, I guess that's one thing. It's like you stop mowing your lawn, everyone knows that you probably get snakes in Australia, but
right.
It is sexist to have a lawn. This is where I started to even be like,
All right, guys.
that it's like lawns as a tool to enforce the gender division of labor. The way that lawnmowers are marketed or have always been marketed as Father's Day gifts, because outside of the home is the man's domain where he goes and that's his thing, and the woman's inside. Another quote, this is from Virginia Scott Jenkins in her book, The Lawn, A History of an American Obsession. She says, on the American front lawn, men use power, machinery, and chemicals, the tools of war, to engage in a battle for supremacy with Mother Nature. And Mother Nature has initial capitals.
Oh, Lordy Lou.
Wait, there's one more lawn that I was like, oh, no, one more quote. In one of the articles that I read.
Someone needs to count how many times we say the word lawn in this episode.
All right. This is from one of the many articles I read. I'm sorry, I lost track. But it is unchristian, the landscaper Frank J. Scott wrote in The Art of Beautifying Suburban Homegrounds, to hedge from the sight of others the beauties of nature, which it has been our good fortune to create or secure. So he's like, cut your lawn so that I can see how nice of a house you have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He added magnanimously that the beauty obtained by throwing front grounds open together is that excellent quality which enriches all who take part in the exchange and makes no man poorer. So lawns become aesthetic extensions of manifest destiny, symbols of American entitlement and triumph, of the soft and verdant rewards that result when man's ongoing battles against nature are finally won. The high drama of lawns. Tom.
This is classic, leftist analysis of society and sociology. It's all very interesting. Like, and when you never ask your question, oh, where do lawns come from? Why do we, and you start asking these questions. That's all fine. Where you lose me is like, the implication that this is a very important political battle that needs to be fought, or that this is a pressing concern, or anyone who is lawn adjacent or likes their lawn should be cancelled or put up against the wall, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just me.
It is, well, like I said, it is inherently kind of funny. Like, and I think one of the reasons that probably the anti-lawn stuff has grown in recent years is among young people sharing anti-lawn memes.
Yeah.
And that, like, they refer to it as like green carpet, derogatory. There's like talking about people's green carpet. There was this TikToker. I want to talk about the TikToker who's anti-golf, but let's wait and get to that, who went viral for being so anti-golf. Yeah, there's just all these like militant should I describe some memes?
Please. Our listeners love that.
I know. There's one, sorry, the first one I opened up is just, it's a picture of a backyard with a lawn, and the text says, "Look at this backyard. It fucking sucks." This one has an insect and it's pointing a gun at me, and it says, "You better leave the leaves, bitch."
Oh my
So
God.
don't rake up your leaves. This one says, "No more lawn. Society has progressed past the need for lawn." This one has Sonic the Hedgehog, and it says, "Yeah, I smoke weed," and it has the letters for weed, and it says, "Weeds are a made-up concept, and many are ecologically important and beneficial plants that help enrich the lives of local pollinators, so consider diverse native plants instead of a grass monoculture lawn."
I did always feel bad for weeds. I was like, well, it's not weeds' fault, is it? They're just hanging around. They exist.
But it is also true that a lot of weeds, the idea is that it was like they were introduced and they fuck over native plants. So I don't know what the vibe is there. But anyway, maybe some weeds are okay. Who knows?
Mm.
So yeah, there are all these like.
I like this one, which is a photo of a perfectly manicured lawn. It says, "Motherfuckers be like, why are the bees and butterflies dying?
Yeah.
My brother in Christ, your lawn looks like this."
Yes. Right. Why are the bees dying? As though you're pushing your little lawnmower, you little capitalist cuck.
The income limits we've put on.
Get off the grass, please.
Sure, let's just move back from there.
Come on. Hey guys, I've just reseated that.
Yeah, please, off the thing.
Sorry, man.
All good? That's all good. Thanks. So it's the projects that count.
But what are the solutions? And should we even be talking about solutions, for example, in the Greens political party, or will we just look like absolute wonk losers? Should we ban lawns as suggested by Aviva?
Well, I mean, this feels like it ties. I'm sure you have an answer to this question too, but it also feels like it ties back into the classic. Greens are always no. We want to take things away. We're negative, and we want to fuck up your own private lives, even though people's lawns or personal gardens, they feel like they have a level of control and joy in doing that. And so that might be a tough ask, but the conversation about golf courses is very interesting, and it does feel like there is some serious political grassroots energy and questioning about how fucked golf courses are. I remember Malcolm Gladwell did an episode of his podcast that was just laying out the case. Like the situation of golf courses in Los Angeles is fucking insane, and across California is just so insane. Of course, the richest people in the world live there and love this to cordon off beautiful big green space for the private enjoyment of the rich fucks. And lots of people are saying this is insane and ridiculous. Surely the public and the people deserved this big green space. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good fucking question. I had this argument with my two best friends, Reed and Andy. Reed is probably listening to this podcast right now, or maybe he's stopped because he knows I'm going to start talking about how golf sucks. They love golfing.
Right.
And I like to tell them they can't be communists or socialists and still golf. And they're like, nah, it's the people's sport, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, I mean, I get that there's a distinction between there's like fancy private golf clubs and then there's like public golf clubs. But either way, you have to go and I don't know, pay a bunch of money. It's like the enormous space that is used up by golf courses is just incredible. I know, like looking at, if you ever look at a map of a city, and you're like, wow, what's that massive green space? You're like looking for somewhere to put some sort of piece of public infrastructure, for example, or housing. Yeah. And you're like, what's that? Oh, that's the golf course taking up like 90% of that fucking suburb. Right. And golf courses, I think, are interesting in this discussion because in a way, golf courses are hyper lawns. Like they are the most lawny lawns of all lawns.
Uber lawns.
As I understand it, they use like a whole lot more chemicals to keep them the way that they are. They would probably require more irrigation because they have to be kept at this perfect particular state. They have to be mowed more frequently, obviously. And they are hyper privatized, like hyper exclusive. I guess they're less privatized than a private home. That's a silly thing to say. But in the same way, it's like really, really only a few people generally have access to the country club, to the golf course, and particularly traditionally are going to be going and using this enormous space, which only a few of them can fit. It's like this TikToker who got famous for her anti-golf socialist TikToks one of them she talks about comparing the amount of space that is required per player for golf as compared to any other sport. Like that you can fit maybe, 20, I don't know, a couple of dozen people on a golf course that's this massive thing, whereas you can have far more people on a football field that's like actually much smaller. And why do they need all that fucking space? They can hit their little ball and like do deals about whatever. I don't know.
And there was something, I mean, during the pandemic, I remember there was the push around in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and I don't know all the details of this, but people, they turned a local golf course because no one could play golf into a public park, and people were like, this is fucking awesome. And then afterwards they were like, come on, we need to maintain this. Surely we can share, even like a sharing schedule. So like maybe golf only on some days and the rest it's a public park. And even that was met with, of course, fierce moneyed interests and resistance against the idea of sharing this giant green space on this beautiful planet in which we all live.
Yeah, when there are like multiple, like there are multiple golf courses in Brisbane. Interestingly, though, one of the things that the Brisbane City Council, for folks who don't know, has definitely been like, I feel, cognizant to the growing Greens movement in the city for some time, and will often like has adopted a lot of our policies over the last few years. One of the things that we'd proposed was returning Victoria Park Golf Course, this big golf course near the city, making it public space or replanting it and that sort of thing. And they're actually now doing that. There's this Victoria Park project. I think they're retaining like maybe a small part for mini golf, maybe a driving range. And
again, mini golf is so much more. That's the people's. That's actually the people's sport. It's
that
fucking
is
mini
so
golf.
true. Anyone can do mini golf. It's I love a mini golf.
Love it.
But they're like planting trees and making it a big park, and they've got all these beautiful things that they're going to put on it. And it's like, this is what we should be doing. It's fantastic. We should do this to all golf courses. Maybe you can have like one place to play golf. I don't know. But we should be able to use it sometimes. But there's this Sky News clip.
For some reason, a lot of greenies and left-wingers seem to hate golf. They view golf as a sport for middle-aged men, who are, of course, the scourge of the earth, and they think all this land should just be public parkland for everyone to trample on.
The way that they refer to, like, allowing the public to come in and use golf courses as a park, and they're like allowing whoever to come in and trample all over it, as though like the stinking masses will just come in and just be like, and just like tearing up chunks of grass and like shitting in the ponds.
Shitting in the bunker and then like pushing his sand over it to cover it up. The fucking public.
Yeah. There's this really weird article that I came across when I was looking at the golf stuff, that it is so strange that it's kind of hard to tell whether they're in support of golf or anti-golf, but I think they are like a very conservative pro-golf economist. This is from 1983, and it's like, why don't socialist societies have golf? It's because golf is the sport of capitalism, which is good. It's kind of long, but I want to read some of this. Okay. Why is golf solely in capitalist societies? Because it is not merely a sport. It is an activity, a lifestyle, a behavior, a manifestation of the essential human spirit. Golf's ethic, principles, rules, and procedures of play are totally capitalistic. They are antithetical to socialism. Golf requires self-reliance, independence, responsibility, integrity, and trust. This guy takes golf way too seriously. No extenuation is granted misfortune, mistake, or incompetence.
Did you say self-reliance? Don't you have a fucking caddy driving around and carrying all your shit?
Yeah. He's like life, it is often unfair and unjust with uninsurable risks. More than any other sport, golf exploits the whole capitalist spirit. But he's like, it's not for weaklings like that don't want you to work like those socialist societies. Golf is for strong, independent, individual men.
I'll say yes, it is like capitalist because it's been fucking racist for a very long time. And if you're a person of colour or a Jew, you weren't allowed to join any kind of club. So yeah, that's a beautiful metaphor for capitalism, actually.
Well, apparently, even in the 80s, they were saying that socialism was trying to invade and ruin golf via handicaps. This is his take. He says golf is conservative. Yes. Rules change slowly, some never. Ancient and honourable customs must enhance survival values if they have withstood the test of time. What is this person? The socialist spirit, so pervasive in other areas, has tried to invade golf. Handicaps are proposed to equalise results, but a true golfer shuns handicap play. At best, it is to him only an index, a prestige of ability. Efforts to make competition more equal or quote-unquote fair are diseases that would have killed a less capitalistic game.
Jesus Christ. Truly unhinged stuff.
Extremely unhinged.
What is the most socialist game?
What is the... Yeah, and then
The
we
most
start thinking
socialist
about
sport.
this.
I guess it'd be something involving teamwork, I suppose, in which nobody wins.
Nobody wins.
But everyone just has a great time. It's probably just like going on a hike through nature or something and looking after each other and all coordinating the camp and sort of, everyone doing a division of labor and from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, that kind of thing.
Is that a sport?
I guess by the nature of it, yes, the competition and someone losing and stuff is bad praxis. So I'd say no. You win. Everyone wins at hiking by simply experiencing nature, being alive and being present and having all the material needs met and enjoying life.
Yeah. I do, yes. I think that you're right when you were saying we run the risk of being the Greens hate everything when we're like, fuck lawns, fuck golf courses, all of this. But we can talk about, what else could be there in its place. I think, to be clear, my view is that we need some open green spaces like that for things like backyard cricket. And if we are truly like going to be true to our beach socialist values of 4-day work week, because then we want to chill out and do things like lie around on the beach or on the grass. If you don't have a beach near you, we need grass. I think we can do it. I do wonder if you think that parks should look, should we be like all of these parks that are just open spaces, should we make them look a little bit more different, make them more potential habitat spaces? But then maybe people will be like, it's more dangerous for the kids if there's all these creatures there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I assume botanic gardens are, they're highly cultivated, aren't they? And sort of like, manicured and there's lawns and stuff. And I do associate them with being some of the most beautiful parts of our modern cities. So, Cities Botanic Garden, I think, is pretty fucking stunning. And there's a huge amount of conservation work and education and all that kind of thing in those places too. But, I mean, also surely the main battle in a lot of that stuff is national parks and preserving wild places and rewilding, as we were saying, places that were previously fucked over, particularly if they were, bought up and cut down for production process through capitalist profit making, then yes, we got to take that land back and rewild it as much as possible. Yeah,
and the other side of it is kind of returning to private residences and lawns literally in front of your house. Aviva's proposal in her assessment was ban lawns because everyone has to plant a garden, and maybe not so far as an immediate ban prohibition on the cultivation of lawns and state mandated garden planting. But people love gardens. Like, people want to learn how to plant a garden. That's often presented as the alternative to lawns in a lot of these movements is, ditch your lawn, plant a garden instead, particularly if you can plant it with native plants and if you can plant it with food.
Yeah.
Another study that I saw from the University of California, Santa Barbara, found that 2 pounds of carbon emissions could be prevented for every pound of homegrown vegetables consumed. That's mostly, apparently the big part, like the biggest chunk of that comes from methane and other emissions that would be produced when you're putting food scraps in landfill, because if you have a garden, you should be composting for it. So I was like, that's a bit of a stretch, but no, I mean, I guess it does point to, the value of having a productive compost that you could use on a garden. And, there is lots of environmental, like lots of emissions involved in food production and transport, etc. There have been these like food not lawns movements as well since the 90s that I was reading about. True. Food not lawns.
Food not lawns, fuck lawns, lawns stink,
lawns
gardens,
are a fuck.
please.
There was one, it was like Born to grow lawns are a fuck something. This was another meme that I saw. Have you seen the classic Sam Wallman cartoon in Overland? The fuck
No.
lawns. You haven't seen this? Oh,
I don't think so.
We should. Well, I'll post it on the Instagram, but like we can link to it as well in the show notes. Sam Wallman, legendary leftist illustrator, did this for Overland magazine, and it's got gorgeous illustration of like hands ripping up a lawn, and underneath are all of these there's flowers, and it says fuck lawns. If nothing is eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. And obviously, as Sam Wallman cartoons do, it has all these beautiful little bits of text and information and little illustrations all around it. It's worth I would love this as a poster. In one section it says hose over mows. It has an illustration of a hoe and then versus a mower.
Holy shit. Each year, people spend over $30 billion on lawns, which consume 30 to 60% of urban freshwater supplies. Over 3 million kilos of chemical fertilizers are dumped annually on US lawns alone. Is that 30 million?
Yeah, looks
Lot.
like 30 million. It's a fucking lot. Yeah. And up the top, in 17th century England, highly manicured lawn emerged as a symbol of control, dominance, and status across the estates of the ruling class. Fuck lawns.
Well, we bloody did it, Emerald. Thank you so much for putting that together. I hope you enjoyed that, patrons. Thank you for your support. Please spread the word. If you're prepared to consider increasing your contribution to the show, that'd be cool. But if not, that's totally fine. No worries. You can always email us hello at seriousdangerpod.com. No worries if not. Whatevs. Just reinvest that money and fuck you up your neighbour's lawn. That'd be good.
Yeah, plant a garden.
Yeah. And hit us up on social media at seriousdangerau all over the shop. Thanks, team. Bye.
Love you. Fuck lawns.
Serious Danger Australia.